Hey, it is me, Ginger. It is the 4th of December 2020, and I'm just making a quick video because the paperbacks for my book High Point came in. They look amazing. So, yeah, I've written 25 full-length books, sold 65,000 copies of my books, but even now it never gets old seeing one of them in print. With romance especially, something like 90% of all romance books are digital only. But I still get really excited when I see one of them in print. There's a certain legitimacy to it, which I think is amazing. And this book looks really, really nice. So I designed the cover myself with the boat, the High Point, which is the sort of the boat in the story, and getting machine gunned, and I've got my own name here. And the cover, it's trying to be congruent with the kind of aesthetic of big sea adventures, like the Clive Cussler books or the Tom Clancy books and things like that. And I think it hits pretty much on the mark there. And the great thing about starting from scratch and trying to publish under my own under my own name rather than the pen name, is I get to do certain things right straight out of the bat. So, straight out of the gate, I should say. So one thing, for example, in the back of the paperback, I have this little page with a Q code. So you can scan it with your phone and sign up to my mailing list and get a free copy of the next book in the series. So these little tips and tricks are kind of exciting to get right the first time out. But at the same time, I'm quite surprised by my experience jumping into this again. Because the reaction to the book hasn't been exactly what I'd expected, which is good because I'm learning a lot and this is an opportunity. And the nice thing is I'm not relying on the success of this book to pay my mortgage. But when I publish this as a romance book, currently I have 102 reviews on it as a romance book, and they're 4 and 5 star, and people really seem to like it. This book, I was starting from scratch, so I didn't have a mailing list to reach out to and ask them to leave reviews. Well, I have 20 people on the list and nobody did. And so far it's garnered 6 reviews, and they're bad. I mean, one of them is a 5-star review that doesn't really say much, but the first review I got was an organic review that complained about the characterization, saying the characters were kind of flat, which I found really interesting because as a romance novel, nobody's ever raised that as an issue in the reviews. And as a romance novel, I would imagine the audience focus more on characterization rather than like the action. So I found that an interesting criticism to have. And then when further reviews came in, there was another review that said the same thing, and I was like, that's really interesting. It's a really difficult thing as an author to deal with, because, you know, I came into this swaggering a bit, thinking like, oh, I know everything about this. But it makes me realize that, you know, different genres have different audiences and different expectations. And my theory had been that this is a really solid book, and that if you marketed it differently, it would still have crossover appeal. I have to work out whether that hypothesis is right or not. Like, maybe there are certain things that I've put in this book to make it successful as a romance novel that don't make it appeal to an action-adventure audience. I don't know. I have to figure that out. There's a lot to figure out, but I think it's really good to have to do that, because I think it's teaching me such a lot. In terms of the next steps with this book, well, at the moment, with the number of reviews it has and the state of the reviews, there's not a lot I really want to do with it, because on Amazon, when Amazon, basically your book is going to be invisible unless you're advertising, but at the same time, if you're spending money on advertising and your book doesn't have like 30 reviews that have, you know, 4 stars and above, then you're going to find your advertising pretty difficult, and you're not going to make a huge amount of money on it. So if I want this book to be a viable option to advertise and become successful that way, I need to get the review count up, and there need to be better reviews. And then I have to ask myself, am I reaching out to the right people to get reviews? Or is there something wrong with the book? Is this where the book lives in terms of the reviews? And that's a really difficult situation to find yourself in as a writer, because I know, as a romance book, this book has 102 4 and 5 star reviews. And as an action adventure book, it doesn't seem to have that, and it's challenging. If I was doing this for the first time and I'd never written or published another book, I'd probably be like feeling like I was kicked in the guts with these reviews. But because there's such disparity between the reaction he got as a romance novel and the reaction he got as an action adventure novel, I have to question everything and analyze everything. And yeah, it's kind of disconcerting because you kind of have to rewrite all your preconceptions about yourself as a writer and yourself as a publisher. But you also always have to take reviews with a pinch of salt. So one of the things that really confuses me is that, this book that I published has been through a rigorous editing process. And I, paid professional editor. You have to do that if you want your books to sell like a traditionally published book. They have to be of the same level of quality as a traditionally published book. So I know that this book is like tightly edited, and yet in more than one of the reviews on this book as an action adventure novel, people criticize the editing, which I find interesting and at the same time disturbing. So I'm going to have to go through and see, hey, did I upload the wrong manuscript or something like that? It's tricky because it really, really makes me question something that I didn't think I'd have to question. One of the other things that was in more than one review that I have to think about is people were complaining about the lack of characterization of the main characters, which again I found really, really unexpected as a criticism, because as a romance novel, the characterization of your main characters is super important. That's what the focus is. And I put a lot of effort into trying to establish the dynamic of the characters within the first chapter or so, because it's so important to the love story moving forward. And so the fact that that's a criticism I got in more than two places, it makes me question my preconceptions about this book. But also, you always have to take things with a pinch of salt, because with 102 reviews on this book as a romance book, no one's ever criticized the editing, no one's ever criticized the characterization. They don't. In fact, people have said "Oh, I didn't like this character because of the way they were." It's like the characterization was enough for them to have an emotional reaction about that particular character. So I find it so interesting that the reviews are so different, and they say things that I did not expect them to say, and they make criticisms that I am not entirely sure are fair or valid. Maybe they are, though, and that's where you have to check your ego as a writer. So it's really, really confusing. I think what I have to do moving forward is I have to continue getting as many reviews as I can, because at the moment, with the number of reviews that I've got and the number of stars that I'm getting, this book is kind of like in purgatory. There's no point in me advertising it on Amazon, because that number of reviews is really going to impact the success of any advertising. At the same time, if you don't advertise on Amazon, your book's pretty much going to remain invisible. So yeah, in the short term, it's a case of I have to try and get more reviews for this book. But if the reviews continue not to be good, I have to stop and be okay, maybe this whole plan I had of publishing my romance books as action adventure books, maybe that's just a bad plan. Maybe if I want to write books under my own name, I have to take a different approach and write different types of books. It's really, really interesting. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to proceed right now. I'm going to continue sort of pushing to try and get reviews for this, and I've got a lot going on with my other pen name. I just released the new novel there, and I'm sort of halfway through the next one. And it's so interesting to be so successful in that field and yet not in this. So I will keep you updated. I have a lot of questions and not many answers. I'm enjoying the ride, and it's really good that it's an ego check. And it's really good because I know whatever happens, I'm going to come out of this knowing so much more about writing and self-publishing, and knowing so much more on how to be successful. And that is an amazing opportunity to have. So that's what you should always look at as you jump into these experiments. They are opportunities to learn and get better. And I am really lucky that I have a successful writing career to be able to look back on and be like, okay, I can be successful at this, and to a certain extent I clearly know what I'm doing. But it's also really interesting to be like, okay, now I have to approach things from a different direction and see what is going to work when I am in a different genre, appealing to a different audience. Who knows where it's going to end up? Exciting. Anyway, my book High Point is available now. At the moment it's 99 cents, free on Kindle Unlimited. If you are vaguely interested in a really rip-roaring sea adventure, check it out. If you want to leave me a review, leave an honest review. I'm not asking you to like give me 5 stars if you don't think the book deserves that, but any review, honest review, is going to be appreciated, because authors read them and they take stuff from them, and those reviews help them become better authors. Anyway, I will keep you updated, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.